They thought I was just a quiet resident. But when the HOA destroyed my $2 million yacht, they had no idea who they were messing with. Watch until the end to see the shocking truth revealed.
When I first moved into Harbor Crest, the neighborhood looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Rows of clean white houses lined the waterfront, flowers arranged perfectly in every yard, and not a single piece of trash on the sidewalks. To a stranger, it looked like a dream community. But I quickly learned that in Harbor Crest, perfection came with a price. A price controlled by the HOA. I didn't attract attention when I arrived. That was intentional. I wore plain clothes, drove an ordinary truck, and acted like just another quiet renter who wanted a simple life by the water. People gave me polite, distant smiles, the kind you give someone you don't plan to remember. That worked in my favor. The less they noticed me, the easier it was to understand how this place really worked. Within the first week, I started noticing things. An elderly neighbor whispered angrily to her husband about a $300 fine for a discolored mailbox. A young couple seemed afraid to let their dog walk on the front lawn. Even the kids rode their bikes without making noise, as if an invisible ruler watched their every move. That invisible ruler was the HOA president, Mason Grant. Tall, always wearing expensive suits, and always holding a clipboard, Mason walked the neighborhood like a guard patrolling a prison. He inspected houses, yards, cars, everything. People lowered their eyes when he passed. Some greeted him with forced smiles, but their fear was obvious. Every day Mason's rule tightened. Someone's garden hose violated the aesthetic code. A family received a $200 fine for a bicycle left on their porch. Another neighbor had to repaint their house because the color did not match the community standard. But the most common fear involved the marina. Rumors said Mason didn't like outside boats, especially ones he couldn't control. He wanted power over everything by the water, even though the HOA technically had no authority there. Yet residents still obeyed him, because they didn't want trouble. I watched, listened, and kept quiet. What Mason and his board didn't know was that my presence in Harbor Crest wasn't random. I had moved there deliberately, after hearing stories about the corruption hiding behind perfect lawns and white fences. I wanted to see for myself what was true. And I had a secret. One they never bothered to guess. To them, I was just a quiet man with a small house on the hill. They didn't know I also owned a $2 million yacht at the marina. And they definitely didn't know I owned something far bigger than that. Everything was in place. Now all I needed was for the HOA to make their first move. The trouble started on a quiet Monday morning. I opened my door to find a bright yellow paper taped dead center. Impossible to ignore. In bold black letters it read, "Violation. Unauthorized vessel. Immediate removal required. Fine. $5." I stared at the paper for a long moment, almost amused. My yacht was fully registered and legally docked. The HOA had absolutely no authority over the marina. But Mason didn't rely on rules, he relied on fear. By the end of the week, 2 more notices appeared. One claimed my house paint was slightly faded, even though it had been repainted just a month earlier. Another accused me of disrupting community aesthetics, because my truck didn't match the neighborhood environment. It was clear, Mason had decided I was a target. I kept every notice, carefully organizing them into a folder. I never argued, never complained, never showed anger. The more harmless I seemed, the more confident Mason became. The neighbors noticed what was happening, but no one dared speak out. One woman quietly approached me while carrying groceries. "Just be careful," she whispered without looking at me. Then she walked away quickly, as if she feared being watched. I began hearing stories, real horror stories. A man who refused to pay a fine had his car mysteriously towed in the middle of the night. A family that questioned fees found their outdoor furniture destroyed while their security cameras malfunctioned. Every incident somehow protected the HOA. All of this made one thing clear. Mason operated like a small-time dictator hiding behind community rules. But I wasn't afraid. I wasn't just collecting fines. I was collecting evidence. I needed the HOA to make a major move, something that would reveal their true nature. And then one night, they finally crossed the line. The night everything changed was colder than usual. The wind coming off the water carried a sharp bite, and the marina was unusually quiet. I had been sleeping lightly, expecting something to happen. When I heard the low rumble of a small engine at 2:13 a.m., I knew this was it. I slipped out of my house and made my way toward the marina, moving carefully in the shadows. From behind a row of storage sheds, I saw them. 3 figures on a small utility boat, heading straight for my yacht. Even in the dim light, I recognized Mason by his rigid posture and his expensive coat flapping in the wind. They pulled up beside my yacht with the confidence of men who believed the rules didn't apply to them. Mason climbed aboard first, followed by 2 HOA board members. All 3 carried tools, metal poles, hammers, and shockingly, a chainsaw wrapped in an old towel. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the realization that they were giving me exactly what I needed. Their voices echoed across the quiet water. "Let's make this a lesson," Mason said, his tone cold. "They'll never ignore us again," one of the board members replied. I pulled out my phone and began recording every second. First, they smashed the windows, glass scattering across the deck. Next, they slashed the leather seats inside, laughing as they tore apart luxury they had never seen up close. Mason ran his hand along the railing before powering up the chainsaw. The loud whirring cut through the still night as he sliced through the metal, like he was cutting down a tree. What they didn't know, or didn't bother to check, was that the marina's private security system was filming them from 3 different angles, all in high definition. They thought they were destroying someone else's prized possession. They didn't realize they were destroying mine. And soon, they would learn something even more shocking. They weren't just trespassing on any dock. They were trespassing on property I owned. The morning after the destruction, the marina was eerily quiet. Sunlight reflected off the water, sparkling across the ruined yacht, but the calm didn't erase the tension in the air. By 9 a.m., the HOA called an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Mason and his 2 board members entered with forced smiles, pretending to be shocked by the night's events. They acted as if the destruction of my yacht was a complete mystery, and they expected sympathy, or at least compliance, from the other residents. I arrived quietly, carrying nothing but my laptop. The room buzzed with nervous whispers, and all eyes turned toward me as I approached the front. Mason's confident smirk faltered slightly, though he tried to hide it. He had no idea what was coming. I opened the laptop and pressed play. The video filled the projector screen, showing everything from the previous night. Every hammer strike, every chainsaw roar, every laugh and threat. The room fell silent. Even Mason's bravado couldn't survive the undeniable footage. The HOA had thought they were untouchable. They hadn't counted on evidence that left no room for excuses. Then I revealed the bigger truth. I looked Mason in the eyes and said, "I'm not just a resident. I own Harbor Crest Marina. Every dock, every security camera, every inch of this waterfront property belongs to me." The air grew thick with disbelief. Faces went pale. Whispers turned to stunned silence. Mason opened his mouth, but no words came. Before he could react further, I gestured toward the security cameras that had recorded their crime from multiple angles. The local police, who had been waiting discreetly outside, stepped in and began reading them their rights. Mason and his board members were arrested for trespassing, property destruction, and conspiracy. Neighbors, who had lived under his intimidation for years, watched in awe and relief. They finally realized the person they underestimated, the quiet man in the plain clothes, was the one with the U. The aftermath of the arrests was almost surreal. Harbor Crest, which had always seemed like a picture-perfect community, suddenly felt different, lighter, as if a shadow had been lifted. News vans lined the streets, cameras flashing, and reporters interviewing residents who had long lived in fear. Headlines blared. HOA president arrested in yacht destruction scandal. The story spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Neighbors who had once avoided eye contact now approached me, some shaking hands, others just staring in disbelief. They shared stories they had never dared tell before. Small humiliations, unfair fines, and threats that had haunted their daily lives. Their relief was palpable, but so was their anger. They had suffered for years under Mason's reign, and finally, justice had arrived. The investigation into the HOA revealed more than just vandalism. Embezzlement, fraudulent fines, and intimidation schemes spanning almost a decade came to light. Mason had used the community's fear to hide his misdeeds, but every lie crumbled under the weight of evidence. It was a cautionary tale for anyone who thought power could be abused without consequences. For me, the victory was personal, but not about revenge. I replaced my yacht with a new one, naming it Justice, as a reminder of what had happened. I didn't seek attention, but sometimes circumstances force the truth to be seen. I remained in Harbor Crest, not as a secretive resident, but as someone who had restored balance and safety to the community. Mason's downfall also taught a larger lesson. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Those who appear powerless may simply be waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. They thought I was just a resident. They were wrong. And sometimes letting people underestimate you is the most powerful move of all.